Hello and welcome back to another episode of Dragons from Scratch, the Breakdown. In this session, we're going to be talking about the second half of this first episode that we recorded, session 0, as we're calling it.
Where stuff gets real.
And we're just picking up where things left off. They just finished the fight in the alleyway. They have a direction where they're going. They've encountered the gold curse, and they're trying to figure out where they can go to stop it, really.
Yeah. This is the fun part. This is the part where we talk about how to create danger.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Murder and all that.
How do you escalate the stakes? How do you raise the stakes? How do you get the party where they need to go and also start having fun, right? Because you already introduced all the characters. Now where do you go?
What you do is you throw them into a situation where they no longer feel safe, right? They knew that the source of all their troubles was coming from somewhere in here. So somewhere in here is probably somebody that wants to kill them. There's an enemy. When they start poking around, they would poke the hornet's nest, and whatever was going to come out of that thing is probably going to sting. So that is really like a key element, is taking them away from a place of relative safety and putting them into a place of obvious danger.
So this happened in the first session a couple times, but it happened even more in the second half of this session. There were a couple moments where the party kind of split a little bit. You had the party go in a couple different directions. You had one character going off on their own to do something, and the rest of the party is off kind of doing their own thing. How do you handle splitting the party? Because I know there's a lot of DMs that are like, never split the party, never let the party split. How do you handle those moments? These were kind of smaller moments of that. I feel like it wasn't a true splitting of the party, but it definitely drives things differently.
In this instance, it was a choose your battles. Okay. I could have covered everything and every character was doing, but we would have been there for way too long. This was a one shot. The session was supposed to be over in 4 hours. We were getting into the 3rd hour mark. Okay. So having to realize that, I had at this point started to build a skeleton of where this was going to go. Right.
Okay,
I hadn't done any
started to
pre-planning.
figure out where things were going to wind up.
I was hoping it didn't work out that way, but I had already built a plan. My plan, we will get to it, was shot completely in the foot, and I had to completely scrap it and come up with a new one on the fly. However, I had one. If I would have spent time running every game, running everything that the characters would have done, it would have been a problem. I would have run out of time. I wouldn't have made it there. And the things that I really wanted to pay off, I would have had to speed those up. And that was not the battle I wanted to lose. So I picked what progressed the story the most, that I felt was the most important to granting it. And I let the other things happen off camera. And when I knew something was going to happen, that was just going to be, I think it was Joe's character ran off to play more party games and went off and either won or lost, but went off. The only reason they won was because Maladrid was there and was able to intimidate the other carnival person to not fix the game. Ergo, they won. So
there was also the situation of Maladrid talking to the changeling, while the rest of the party went off to see the cryptids and the freaks off on the side.
I had ideas, but I just couldn't do it. I would have been in there for 40 minutes. I had a lot of funny ideas in the House of Freaks, but I think
it was kind of funnier having it be off camera.
Yeah.
Like we didn't really delve into it. I think it was actually kind of funnier, like having us going like, yeah, we're going to see some cryptids. And it's sort of like, we get kind of like a vague description and coming out like, well, that was.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what the story was. Like, not only did some of it happen off camera, but also there weren't any cryptids there.
Yeah.
There was a stuffed griffin,
but like a poorly
there weren't
stuffed
any
griffin.
Actual cryptids.
Right.
There weren't any actual freaks. It was like a robot with a human hand. That was kind of about it.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting to see how you played that, where this thing's advancing the story. This thing's interesting. It's kind of funny and we can have fun with it, but let's not spend too much time on it.
Right.
So
sometimes inverting expectations could be funnier than just kind of going along with it. Like if it would have been full of like really cool cryptids, right? We're going to spend the rest of the afternoon there, versus having it was kind of funnier to have it be like the world's worst roadside exhibition.
Yeah.
Womp womp.
Yeah.
So there were really two paths you could have taken coming out of the town, and you had the casino and the circus. What kind of drove you guys to go to the circus over the casino?
I know what a casino is.
Yeah.
Right. I've been to a couple casinos in my life. I know what casinos are. I know what they are in this context of a D&D game. Like, what has Campbell got cooking for a circus?
Yeah.
That I want to see.
It seemed like you had ideas going into the circus. Like you had plans going into the circus, and you had all sorts of games seemingly ready to go, which I want to get into. But what drove you to kind of push them towards the circus a little bit?
The circus was supposed to be a much different encounter, right? The circus, as I thought it up, there were carnival goers, there were other people, but the circus was supposed to be like an integral part of the actual casino organization. They weren't supposed to be separated. They were supposed to be a little bit more intertwined.
Oh,
I had thought of an idea to have there be like a sort of a fight on the inside if they actually made it to the big top, where if things kind of went awry or the direction was going to have it, where they would have to fight like a series of almost like Batman Returns style carnival villains that would have done things like thrown flaming clubs at them and a displacer beast tamer.
Yeah.
There would have been more things that could have gone wrong in the circus, but I chose at the last minute to sort of scrap it and change gears. And instead of having the circus be kind of the driver, I made the circus and I made the casino sort of elements that happen to be in the same place, and turn the circus more into a red herring and make it something that wasn't the cause of the gold curse, but was benefiting from the people who are coming to get the gold curse. So sort of make it kind of a ancillary or secondary attraction.
Well, you had, I mean, right off the bat, you had Joe just kind of go right in on the games, all in. He was like, "Is there an archery game? Yeah. Let's have some fun." And
Joe the human being also is really like, he appreciates those, right? Like, he knows like all the tricks of the actual real life carnival games.
Oh, gotcha.
As a player, I was utterly unsurprised that Joe the human went after that.
Play what you know.
It made a lot of sense to the character also.
Yeah. The thing that changed, the thing that changed it up right away was Maladrid becoming grossly
the mob boss,
in the mob boss, right? Yeah, when Maladrid pulled it, it was just pure luck, because I had them being related to a mafia syndicate in some way already.
Oh.
I was going to have an underworld contingent be a part of it. And when the underworld contingent became exactly what a character was, which was connected to it, the idea to ditch the carnival as sort of more of a dangerous encounter and make it something that the characters were now in control of and run with that just for my own sake, what it allowed me to do was, instead of there being two different things, I could pool all of the terror right into the casino, and I could turn this into something that allows the characters to play in a sandbox. So I saw an opportunity, and I just pushed all my threats over to one side. Right. And I made this be something where I said, here you go. You take the reins. Go. Run with it. What happens? And I literally had a conversation off the top of my head where I just played off of whatever she said.
This is something we didn't touch on in the first half of the session, but what level were you running your characters at?
3.
This was the third level character.
Yep. They were all third level. Yep.
It seems like the weapons that you all had were a little overpowered for a level 3 character.
So Nyx's sword was just a regular sword. I think I made
you kept casting Booming Blade on it, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I cast Booming Blade on it, and I think I made reference to it like he summoned a sword that was painted silver. It was not a silver
You did
sword.
say that it was painted silver.
Right. So the gif in the lore, right?
I didn't catch that.
It's like the silver sword is like the ultimate weapon. It's like the +5 Holy Avenger of their sort of neck of the world. But he is cosplaying as a gith. So of course he has a cosplay sword. It's a real sword. But he's painted it silver to look like a Githyanki silver sword.
That makes it even funnier, actually, because like I didn't realize that it wasn't
so many levels that I didn't pick up on when I'm running this game so fast.
It's all these little nuances that you built into your characters that are just
really great,
ridiculous,
but
also just lend so much more flavor to the session and help you build out that world and things that if you do pick up on them, which you didn't.
Sometimes I did. Some things I picked up on, some things I didn't. Some things I actively ignored, while other things I expanded upon.
Yeah. There's character moments and character backstory that just never get touched on.
No.
Never get built on.
It was never a cryptid.
Never go into it.
Not in this one shot. It was never a cryptid.
Right. Yeah. Not in this one shot.
All the jokes don't have to pay off.
Yeah.
Right. Especially in a one shot. Don't sweat having to pay off every joke every session.
It's a buffet, right? Like I said before in episode 1, pick what you know. When you start developing that story, pick what looks good, right? Grab what sings to you. If something sparks in you, just like you're trying to get the players to find something that interests them so they will be interested and engaged, you're allowed to do the same thing. You can play off of them and let them engage you. I ditched an entire circus fight because I loved seeing Ma Fratelli scream at them. It was like, it was straight up like the Death to Smoochie, if anybody saw that, like the Irish Muffin. That's like, oh, this is bringing back strong vibes from this movie. And flat out, it came out of left field and it hit me so hard in the face and it gobsmacked me that my NPC's reactions were genuinely mine. I did not know where to take this.
Just flabbergasted.
But I didn't want to stop it because it was so funny to me that I just said, you know what, I'm giving up. You take this one. But that engagement is going to come at you, and it can be really not difficult, but it can be easy to feel bad when, as a game master or DM, whatever, you don't grab all of those. It's like, you threw me a nugget, you threw him a nugget, and somebody could be out there throwing nugget after nugget after nugget at you, but they just are not as interesting to the plot. They don't grip you. They don't meld well. They're cool ideas, but listening to somebody throw out an idea at you and knowing that they care about it and they're throwing it at you repeatedly and you just don't get it to fit sometimes. There are opportunities. You can do whatever you can to meld it and make things go. But when you really try and force something in that doesn't fit, then you take time away and you try to shove something and shoehorn something in, I sometimes feel that can stand out a lot more than just letting it be a little anecdote and a little joke that comes, goes, gets a quick laugh and moves on before expounding upon it and diving on it and taking that hook.
When you have such a strong character like Meladrid, who's kind of taking the reins, driving the group, is the group mom kind of deal.
Yeah.
How do you make space as a player for that kind of character? How do you let that character kind of shine?
It's a couple different things, and it depends on who's doing the shining, right? So Meladrid was played by my wife Judy. I'm sure she'll be on a future episode at some point. But she was like, her character clearly took the reins of the party, right? And that's good in a way, right? That there's a natural party leader, someone's driving the action, someone's sort of the face of things.
You need somebody to kind of make the decision of which direction to go.
Sometimes you need someone to just jump through to push, right? And in good groups that will sort of happen organically. But it doesn't always, and that's an interesting challenge maybe for a future episode, right? It's like, what do you do if there is no natural party leader that emerges, right? In this case, it was fairly straightforward.
Yeah. Definitely for a future one, because I've dealt with that a lot.
Yes,
that's big.
Like, I mean, you mean like nobody's really like pushing the story forward.
Where there isn't a player, there isn't a player whose character is pushing things forward. Yeah, it does happen.
Yeah.
The trick is that when you are the one playing the character who's pushing things forward, it's incumbent upon them to make room for the other people, the other players,
right,
for their characters to shine also, right?
Right.
So it's Granny is saying to Nyx, like, keeping, like, while she's being mob boss, she's like hard code switching back to Granny for a moment, saying, no, you are not allowed to gamble, kid. Like, this is not right. And then code switching back to being the mob boss. It's a funny story beat, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it also is an opportunity for Nyx to have his fun little moment in an area where, despite that is happening, despite there being another character who's driving the action. It's making room for the other characters in a way that's really helpful, I think.
Right.
And some of that comes from experience, right? But some of it's just, if you are a player and you're in a game and you feel like you're hogging the mic, cool. Listen to that voice inside you and find a reason, no matter how thin or contrived, to give the mic and the spotlight to someone else in a way that they will appreciate. Not just forcing them into the spotlight, because some people don't like that, but finding a reason to ask. A lot of people try to play active characters in a way that they are perfect. They know everything. They can solve any problem. Find a reason why your character would need to ask someone else for advice, right? Find a reason why your character would want to do X, Y, and Z. Or find a reason to hand the mic back to the DM, right? Let them then hand it back however where it's supposed to go.
I mean, as a DM, how do you kind of curate that? How do you gatekeep that? If you do have a character that's dominating the session to the point that nobody else gets to play in the space, how do you curate that? How do you walk that back a little bit?
It's very similar to what Yates said about a player, where a player needs to hand the mic. As a game master, one of the things that I will do is I will pause, or something that the character who is primarily doing all of the talking or leading the thing, holding the mic. I'm going to keep using that. I like that. The character that's holding the mic, they will say something that will trigger a group response. Where I will say, for example, I don't know if I do this. I can't remember if I do this in a session, but I'll say, that's great. When that happens, somebody else make a roll. And when they make a roll, regardless of how good or bad they do, how good or bad will trigger a response. It'll trigger something. It might trigger you see nothing, but in your seeing nothing, you notice something false. And then I give you an opportunity to act. Or you notice something and I give you an opportunity. I have given information, actable information, to a single player because of another player's action. And I give to maybe everybody but you. Because you're talking, you don't notice it. But as you're talking, you notice this person sneaking around the back. I did that in one of the carnival games where I suddenly noticed that I had Meladrid notice, and that might have been my detriment because in doing it, I think sparked this whole thing. But I had Meladrid notice the game was fixed. Right. That's an example of that. Now, that wasn't a situation in which any character was really holding the mic, but I wanted to add other elements to make this a little bit more interesting than just a carny game. And I wanted to throw some things in there. So this type of interaction is usually my first go-to. The other way is you can have their action trigger some kind of an encounter that's group-based. Their action can trigger a fight. Their action can trigger a trap. Their action can trigger some story element, which might give you an opportunity to build a new story element. I would not have had this be a dangerous encounter, but one character was talking for a long time. I saw their characters were getting a little glassy-eyed. I want to move it along. So what I did was I invented a crazy thing where they noticed that somebody is invisible, stalking behind them with a knife. There wasn't going to be anybody in there invisible with a knife at all. But because of the fact that it was there, I added this element. And now I've just gone and I've complicated my own storyline to get other players involved. Sometimes that's the knife you fall on. No. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. But sometimes that is the addition, the change, the alteration that you make to your storyline. Is if a character is really taking the reins and you would like the other characters to interact more, even as a game master, because you need them to, maybe they're integral to a story element, change it up, find something fun, throw it in and change it. Turn a peaceful thing into a violent thing, turn a violent thing into suddenly a funny thing.
There was an opportunity for Meladrid to poison some of the people at the circus.
Yes.
And that could have spurned off an entirely different plot line.
Oh, very much.
But I mean, they wrapped up the games. You clearly handed them a key to go check out something over there to get them out of the circus. Moving on to the next thing.
They had wrapped up the circus. I found a way to close it, and I gave them
get them away from the games.
Gave them their way to move along.
Keep moving along.
I do think it's important to take a moment here. Like, if we had, as players, had said, no, we're not done with this yet. Like, the key's over there. Cool. We'll get to that in a second. Like, there's still things we want to do here. that's okay. And that's something that the DM rolls with, and the players should have that agency over it. It's not, you have the key, so get the fuck out the scene. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to get us demonetized, but yeah.
I would have changed things up if they would have stayed. Could they have stayed? Yes. My option for doing that, I can talk about that, but we'll get into that. What would have happened.
Yeah.
And how
there's 1,000 different things that could have happened.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have shot one of the circus employees while playing the crossbow game.
Yeah.
Yep.
They could have had a confrontation with the changeling and gone into combat.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so many different things that could have happened, but as a DM and as players, you kind of collaborate together to keep going along the story together. I feel like
it's not an antagonistic relationship,
and
really isn't.
Yeah.
If you have antagonistic players that are just going chaotic evil on you,
get new players.
That's a whole different situation. I feel like.
I mean, and sometimes it can be. I mean, sometimes leading into that can also be the solution, right? Like if they want to be Chaos Muppets, hell yeah, like let's ride, right? But you kind of know what adventure the group vibe is sort of pointing towards, and it's when you have folks who have a different idea about what the vibe is of the story, that's when you start running into trouble. Where one person wants to go full murder hobo, right, and everyone else is like, let's tell a story about knitting tea cozies.
Well, when you do eventually get to the casino and Meladrig goes full mob boss, and really
when she goes from knitty cozies to being a murder hobo.
Yeah, when she goes from being nice little granny, oh hey dear, and then just go, oh oi, what's this now? And goes full in on them and just goes straight towards the casino workers and just confronts them head on.
Force of nature mode,
Also forced my hand. Was not expecting that. I was expecting to be a little bit more active subterfuge, maybe sneaking around and looking at things. Nope.
Yeah. This is where you would have probably longer than that actually. This is where you would have prepared so much. For that casino scene.
I would have.
You would have prepared so much for that, and we would have just strolled right past it.
You would have had characters ready to go. You would have had plot lines and subplots and different avenues that they could have gone.
They could have played games. They could have had their money taken from them. I had already thought up of several weird casino games that were all kind of draconic based. Nice. I had thought of a bunch of things, and I'll use them in a well-written game that I make in another campaign or something that I have to come up with on the fly later.
You've had 3 weeks to play.
That is not part of this show, but I will use them because I'm proud of them, and I will use them later, and that's okay. I wrote them down on a little scrap of paper during the break, and then I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're not doing these. Okay.
I love it.
I mean, we can get into that a little bit. Like when the players throw you a wild curveball and they just say, okay, we're gonna do this now. Screw your plans, screw any ideas you had. We're just going to go here. We're going to do the thing and I'm going to just take it head on. What do you do?
Bunt. No. When a character is going to throw you that real wild curveball, this is precisely what happened in the last scene. How to deal with curveballs. Let the player pitch. Go off of them. Do things along the lines. React. Okay, I like to do that. Let them take control. If this scene wasn't supposed to work that way, does now. Rewrite it. Think how it would react. Think how the NPCs would react. Would they run away? Don't immediately stop the scene and have them arrested or have them fail. Yates was spot on. You were perfect. It's not supposed to be antagonistic. If you want to play that way, great. You and your group could definitely have a love-hate relationship in that way in which you fight and everything.
That's the vibe.
Some games, but I want the story to be something that everybody enjoys and we work together to come up with something that's fun, interesting, provides unique puzzles and has unique solutions that you all think of and you imagine. When a player comes up with a unique solution to a puzzle, I present a problem. I do not always present or know the solution when I do. When a character presents it and begins to run with it, I like that sometimes. It gives you that opportunity to play off it. You let that ball follow its trajectory.
So like when the group is confronting the boss basically, and they're at the cages and Meladrig gets into it and kind of forces the NPC's hand, really.
The kobolds start to spark out.
The kobolds start to get...
You realize that the kobolds are kind of something's wrong with them.
The elevator kind of thing. And I feel like that's a situation where you kind of can railroad your players a little bit because there's only a certain number of things that the players can do. Really, there's a certain number of spells they have. There's certain attacks they have. When you have 20, 30 kobolds coming at you and saying you need to go this way now, I feel like that's an opportunity to railroad them into a scenario and say, okay, we're going to go do this thing now.
Yeah.
We
could have run off. I mean,
you could have tried. You could have tried.
The threat was what railroaded them. They feared it.
Yeah.
Further investigation would have immediately realized that something was wrong with the Dragonborn and they weren't capable of combat. They were walking strangely. They were sparking out. They weren't reacting quickly. They were only speaking in very polite terms. Further arcana rolls, other rolls, investigation, taking a different tack than just being like, I guess we go with the threat and we realize this is a threat, would have realized that it was actually a bluff.
Yeah.
That was something that I had thought of and I had in there that if they would have taken a session and what they could have done is they could have stopped, they could have grabbed the one Dragonborn that was there that was not a problem and held him down. And then there were the other Dragonborns that were outside that were coming in that were the party would have been able to take them. And in the cacophony of everyone freaking out and grabbing money and running, that fight would have become winnable. And it would have been a different outcome because the big fight would have been in the casino and they would have had to deal with that Dragonborn and things would have changed dramatically. But you're right. What it presented was a clear path to their problem, the solution to their problem, right? But it's important that when you present an idea for it being a railroad, like this is the direction you're going, right? If they decide to not follow that track, don't punish. I like to reward. Yeah. If they would have thought, wait, there's something really fishy about this. They're pushing us into an elevator. I'm not getting in that elevator. Okay, roll perception. There you go.
Yeah.
As soon as they say no and they go against it, I go with the flow of the water.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that takes us directly into the next section, which is the death hallway.
The hallway of spectacular death.
Which is where
hallway
we
of
wanted
spectacular death.
Not to the hallway specifically, but that's where we wanted to go.
Yeah. I mean,
that's why the players were on board.
Takes you to the next section.
That's where we wanted to go. We wanted to get at the next screen, right?
Yeah. And you didn't feel necessarily railroaded into that scenario, or did you?
Not in a bad way, certainly. No. I mean, railroad obviously has a negative connotation to it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I feel like, cool, we want to go towards the danger. Cool, it's that way. Great.
Yeah. So it was a means to an end.
Yes.
And even though it was a way of getting you there,
we were in violent agreement.
You were again collaborating to get to the next step.
Yeah.
And as you worked into the hallway of spectacular death, there was another scenario where there were so many different options of what to do. Yeah. You could have instantly triggered the trap. You could have released the bees. You could have killed all the bees. You could have gone directly into combat with the bees. You could have tried to find another way around. You kept trying to find different ways around. And then eventually you tried to coerce the bees to be your buddies.
Convince the bees.
Yeah. I mean, going back to the other scenario, everyone wanted the same thing. The Dragonborn wanted them out of the casino. They wanted to figure out what was going on. The Dragonborn was letting them because their boss, whatever's going to be at the bottom of that, was like, no, let them in. I will straight up talk to them.
Yeah.
And just like everyone, they bypassed the entire figuring out there was the elevator, figuring out how to get into the elevator, trying to find the keys to the elevator, all this stuff, and sneaking around. They just went and said, where's the boss? He's in the elevator.
The dog caught the car.
At this point, they gave up. They gave us, you have won.
He's that way.
That way.
You go that way now.
That way. Yeah.
Giant plot error.
And that's when
big flashing side.
Yeah.
And that's when the bees came.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's when they're bees.
Yeah.
The bees was
just killed me.
Why
dire bees?
They're funny.
This is one of those ideas where, remember what I said, steal something?
Yeah.
It's okay. That was a trap that was taken from a friend of mine in a completely different role-playing game that had absolutely nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons. It was a game called Palladium's Rifts.
Yeah.
And they had come up with a much crazier hallway. And I remember the hallway because the hallway had like balance beams and pendulums. And it also had like cyber ninjas. And at the end of it, there were missile turrets. And it was all this stuff. And you had to get from one end to the other. And it was this crazy show. and they had to walk from one end to the other. But while they were doing it, the room was full of like a terrible poison that was killing them the whole time. So they had to make it across very quickly, and they had to run across it. And if they stepped on any of these things, these giant hives of bees that were being shaken in these massive devices were going to get destroyed, and all the bees would come at them. But they were also covered in something that attracted the bees. So the bees would have only gone for them, not the cyber ninjas or the missiles or anything else would have gone for them. And they were robot bees. So they weren't even real bees. So they were cybernetic bees with the brains of bees implanted in cybernetic bee bodies, which is just completely what that game is all about.
Yeah, that's about right.
Totally stupid crap like that. So I looked and I said, well, I thought this was super funny. So it was the first trap that popped in my head that was so over the top that was the real name of it, was the Hallway of Spectacular Death. I have no idea where he got it. I'm sure he took it from other stuff, because that smells so much of a random roll chart somewhere in some book. But I just thought it was great. And I decided dire bees. And I just created dire bees off the top of my head. And
I mean, it seemed like a really interesting scenario for the group. Yeah. And
we all use our skills. Yeah.
You all approached it from different directions. Yeah. Some people wanted to bypass it directly. Some people wanted to try and skirt 90% of it.
Yep.
And maybe we can jump over, maybe we can do something. Yeah. And then somebody came up with the ideas of like, well, let me just talk to them.
Just talk to the bees.
And we'll see if we'll get past this, just because, hey, maybe they'll be agreeable if we help them out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a funny moment where it's like, okay, cool. Well, now they're cool with us. Like, but how do we get them out? It's like, boop.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great moment. Your character just going, no, we just want to release them, right? So we just do the thing that releases them.
What you do? Why did you do that? I had to think, I'm like, how is it going to happen? They trigger the trap. What would happen?
But the bees are cool now, so we can do
now. They just want it to stop, right?
Yeah.
I did do a roll wondering that if the actual swinging down and breaking their glass would have pissed them off, but it did not. So they were in a good spot.
It was a dicey move.
It was
such a funny moment.
The players spent a lot of time trying to convince the bees to help them and to attack their enemies. At what point were you just going to keep letting them trying to do it over and over and over? Or do you just say, you don't succeed?
I was, yeah. I mean, they were at their last attempt.
Okay.
At that point, nothing else. Yeah, they were their final attempt. I was going to let everyone try. I was going to let everyone exhaust their options, because I felt that everyone was really engaging. Everyone loved this trap. This trap was really fun. When I first did it, we all died. Like, none of us made it through the trap. We all died. We didn't have the bees, but the balance beams around were sliced by laser swords from techno ninjas. We never made it.
Yeah,
as you do. Yeah, but that is the game. So when it came to this one, because everyone was so engaged, again, I let the players kind of take the wheel and see where it would have gone. And you just don't stop that kind of real fun engagement where everyone really wants to solve your puzzle and everyone's throwing out ideas.
Right.
Bring them. Let them go. And maybe you'll find a way to make it work. And I'll let you come up with different ways. So just have fun. Let them roll. Let them try.
I mean, if you let people just roll animal handling like
over and over
20 times in a row, eventually they're going to roll high enough, right?
So eventually they're going to get it.
There's a certain point that you need to cut off.
You do.
Those kinds of attempts.
Yep. You have to come up with a way to say you've each rolled once. That's it. You can't say, I rolled animal handling. Okay, well, if you come at it from a completely different angle, like now I'm using telepathy. Okay, well, now you're not just being like to a bees and bees don't understand. You're just yelling out gibberish. Now you're having a direct conversation with the queen of a hive.
With a bee.
With a single bee. It happens to be the queen bee.
Yeah.
And now rather than just being a human that's out there flailing your arms and screaming wild nonsense, you are speaking their language directly to them. You have given yourself the ability to try this again. You have unlocked a second reroll. You have done this in a way in which this is so drastically different. And that's the key. I roll it. No, I roll it again. Again, no. But not because you rolled wrong, because you can't do it. Okay, I'm going to completely come at this from another way with a spell and approach from a different angle. Okay, same roll.
I roll it again, nat 20. You still fail.
Same roll, completely different method of attempting it with something that just changes the paradigm completely. Yes. Now that is inventive. That is fun. I love that.
Yep. Great. And as you made your way into the big battle,
control
room
where
there's like all the gold's falling down, and
with the acid pits.
Yeah.
I loved that somebody just asked, are you the one
telemarketing kobolds?
Are you the one that trapped the bees? Are you the one that did that? He's like, yes, I did.
Get him.
Had me in stitches. I was trying so hard not to lose it. I'm like, oh no, that works. That is that. When you make me laugh, your shit automatically succeeds.
The rule of cool,
you
right?
got that's too cool to not work.
Yeah.
That works.
Yeah.
You got him. Yep. He admitted it. Go.
Get him.
There you go.
It felt like there were a couple things in that room that could have been potential items in the battle, potential things that could have come into play.
Yeah, there were.
Acid pits.
Acid pits.
Yeah,
acid pits.
Various other things. You had a ton of kobolds.
A horde of kobolds.
So I've played D&D a few times, and I've come up against mobs of different creatures and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't know that there was something called horde rules.
There aren't.
I made it up.
Oh, you made it up.
I made it up.
There are swarm rules.
There's swarm rules.
Rats, bees.
Yeah.
So
well, I say I made it up, but that is both true and misleading. I adapted it to D&D from three or four other games, that I can name off the top of my head, that use a system for when you're fighting one guy, great. No, I'm fighting a mob of 20 little guys, and it's 20 guys that normally have individual things. When you put them all together, their hit points equal the number of guys.
So instead of rolling, 20 times for each of the individual characters, you're treating them as one entity, basically.
And instead of really rolling to hit, you can roll to hit, or when they're in the mob, they just take constant damage for being in the mob. The mob hurts them, and they roll a constitution save to just take half because they're being stabbed with 100 spears. Several of them will do 1 hit point. So when they're in the mob, they take 2d6 damage as long as they're just in it on the start. Whenever the mob is around them on their turn, if they're in it in the mob's turn, they just take damage.
So that's both a time saving thing as well as just a way of adding a little bit more flavor and variety. Is even though it's not in the rule book, you're now taking this and simplifying what would be a huge pain in the butt for you of keeping track of 20 separate kobolds or whoever, and just saying, okay, horde rules.
It would have slowed down the fight immensely to have 20 kobolds, but to have one giant thing of kobolds that you can always hit. And every time you kill them, they just get a little less effective until they run away. At half hit points, they just ran away because there's 20 kobolds. Now there's 10. Well, those 10 don't think they're going to have any better chances. They're leaving.
Yeah. I mean, that, and you introduced it very quickly in the session. And I feel like you were able to convey exactly what you needed the players to understand in like 30 seconds.
Think to yourself as a game master, what do I want to get out of this? Do I want to weaken the party? Do I want to remove some of their resources? Do I want to scare them? Do I want it to be a big payoff? Do I want there to be a reward at the end? Like in the end, if they solve this puzzle really well, maybe they find the power source. In this case, they got a horde of bees on their side. Maybe when they go into this fight, there's going to be something there. The point of the horde of kobolds was to speed it up, like you said, but also I needed a way to do just dwindling little damage and annoy the party in the back. So it wasn't just everybody ganging up on that dragon, because the dragon was going down. It wasn't a standard dragon.
Yeah.
And if they just fought them versus dragon was going to fall mighty quick. It would have been a little anticlimactic. So having the kobolds get just a bit of nerve and turning them into that amorphous, more of what I called like an environmental hazard than a real monster, but an environmental hazard that was solvable.
And that takes us to the dragon, which, I mean, if this was like, I mean, you said that the party was level 3, right? Yeah. If this was just a full strength copper dragon.
One round, maybe 2.
You would have been just wiped, right? I mean,
I think the min damage on the breath weapon was slightly lower than my max hit points.
It dropped Shane's character twice.
Yeah.
Dropped you once. Yep. And at a certain point, how do you decide as a DM that like, okay, this might be a little bit too much?
There's a couple of things you need to do, but you can follow the same rule that I just put down. What do you want to get out of the fight, right? That dragon, for example, they did more hit points than it had, right? Because they wound up killing the dragon a little earlier. And I decided last minute to restore its hit points to its actual full dragon hit points. If they fell where they fell, they fell. That was okay.
Right.
I didn't mind that. But when I realized that something might be a little bit too much, have the dragon leave at half hit points. The dragon's smart. It doesn't want to die. Have it run away. Maybe have the dragon's breath weapon be, in this case, I made the dragon sick. Maybe it only had one use of its breath weapon, and that was it. It only gets it once a day because it's suffering from the gold curse and trying to fix it. So you throw in those elements, but when you want an out, it's pretty easy when you think about the psychology of any animal or monster. It doesn't want to die. It's gonna run away when it thinks it might be losing.
It seemed like there was an opportunity there for it almost not to come to combat, right? Because yes, it's a dragon. Yes, it's the big bad. But at the same time, you introduced very early that it was a sick dragon. That they could see that it was very sick, that it wasn't doing well. And maybe there was opportunity to be like, hey, let us help you. But the party decided early on not to go that route.
No,
you
that
just
guy
decided,
was a dick. No, when your players are sufficiently motivated to kill a monster, they're going to kill it. They're going to find a way to, NPCs who are jerks to the party, like, they're probably not going to make it.
I mean, we didn't really get a resolution on the gold curse.
We did not.
No.
And I feel like part of that was just time, right? Like, it had been a long session, a long day. At what point how do you decide to just end the session? Might not be the full resolution that you want, might not get the full story flushed out, but how do you decide, all right, we've had enough. We've done the thing. Let's call it a night.
Yeah.
Second half of that first game did end abruptly, and it ended abruptly mostly because it was a session 0, right?
Yeah.
As a session 0, I didn't know if they're all going to be one shots or if I wanted to pick it up again. These characters were fun. I had fun with it. I had fun playing with them. I had fun playing with the people I was with. I mean, you guys were fantastic. And this was one of those things where I was like, wow, this is a really interesting, neat party. This could be a series of goofy one-shots. Maybe I'd pick up the gold curse later. Yep. So there was something in the back of my head that thought, end it. But in doing so, I left questions that might have my players go, I want to play again. And if you want a one-shot to be that way, leaving a couple of those things open can sometimes be good.
Leave more.
Yeah. The other was that I could have talked for another 30 minutes. In reality, we all just wanted barbecue real bad. It was late. We were there for a long time.
Hungry.
It was a 4-hour session. We were hungry. So I could have gone into 20, 30 minutes, which really would have just been me talking and people rolling as they walked around a place, trying to find the clues. But I left it open for just practical reasons, as well as just not knowing exactly where this venture of ours was going to go.
Yeah.
How do you feel the story overall went, the session went, and how do you feel knowing that there are those open-ended questions?
I think I don't know that I would even have to characterize it as an ending abruptly, right? Like, I felt like, cool, we killed the dragon. There are some more questions, but that's good, right? Like, it's not just, well, thanks for coming, everything's resolved, you saved the princess, did the whole thing, right? There were some, because, things don't always have neat endings. It's like, cool, you killed the dragon who was maybe spreading the gold curse, but I mean, dragons don't invent curses.
Also, maybe just afflicted by the gold curse too.
Right, yeah.
Maybe if y'all would have talked to the dragon, you would have had a different resolution.
Maybe the dragon wasn't
instead of just attacking right off the bat, right?
Had it coming. And I think it makes a lot of sense, right? That there are these threads to pull on, maybe for future games. Who knows? Maybe not. I would say also, though, that one thing to highlight here is it is sort of incumbent upon the DM to notice the sort of energy level of the group, right? If you are a person who's pretty good at reading a group, trust that gut instinct, right? It's like, we're all kind of flagging a little bit. There's some eyes glazing over.
We haven't eaten anything. We haven't eaten anything in 5 hours.
5 or 6 hours. Mm-hmm. But if you're not, and a lot of folks aren't great at that sort of read, just ask. Like, there's nothing wrong with the DM saying, I think we're going to wrap this up in 15 minutes. How are we feeling about that? Or, is this a good stop? Just ask those questions. If you don't have to guess, you don't have to rely on that gut. You can just come out and ask. It happened in this group, right? That Campbell's an experienced DM. We are all, adults who are okay with sort of like recognizing our own like level of hunger and stabbiness. We all know when we're getting hangry.
You don't want anyone going murder hobo in real life.
Right, yeah, exactly.
I mean,
but that's not always the case, especially for especially for players who are, often younger, right? They're not necessarily going to recognize it's like, I'm kind of hitting the wall here, guys.
Yeah.
In my day, I remember doing like double sessions of like 10-hour one day.
Oh yeah.
Fall asleep, wake up at my friend's house, get a ton of Taco Bell as soon as they opened, and then do another 10, 12-hour session. Like we did 24 hours of role playing this weekend, people. This was good.
And if your group wants to do that, great.
Fine.
But also having that sort of awareness and respect for the rest of the group, I think it's just important to highlight that.
I guess the last thing we can cover is like, how do you decide how long a session should go?
That is a really, really good question. And I don't know if I actually have the best answer for it. That is where you set that timer. I feel as a game master, I do personally. Other people might be different, but I set an expectation personally when I sit down. I want to be here until 5:30, and then 5:30, I'm in the mood for nachos. Right now it's noon. So I need to get you there by 5:30. I have set that time. If that time goes later, or it goes when we reach around the 4 o'clock, and I see people are glazing over, like we said, I see people tired, then I cut it off. I change things. I'm going to know about halfway through the gas that's left in the tank.
Yep.
And at that point, I make my judgment call to truncate, extend, or work with it.
Communication is essential, right? Verbal and nonverbal. Like if you're running a weekly game, talk with your players about how long the game should go. Or if not, just read the room.
I feel like that's one of the barriers to entry with a lot of DMs and a lot of players too, is like the sessions are too long. Like, and if you have a DM that's running sessions that are 6-7 hours long, that's a lot to try, and that's a lot of time commitment to get to. It's hard enough getting 4 or 5 people together on a good day for 3 or 4 hours.
Right.
But if you're running sessions that are running, 5, 6, 7 hours, you're not going to get people coming back.
Yeah.
We will discuss this on another podcast, but what happens when you get players dropping out? And I play drop-in games. All my games are developed to be a drop-in, where as long as I have a quorum, the game goes on. So if it starts with 6 players, if I have 4 or more, we keep playing. Sometimes I'll go as low as half, and I'll just go 50% and we'll keep playing. But if we play, and then those characters will be there, the other characters will be there, their players won't. And they'll just be flies on the wall with their hands on their side, doing something just like the gamers. They'll be doing that thing where the character's there, even though the player is not. Then they can be asked to do stuff. When that happens, that's just the inevitability. And a lot of times when it comes to setting that expectation for time for games, it's really important. And here's a real good tip. Take a middle break. Take a 10-minute break for bio, grab a soda or whatever you're drinking, grab a snack. And during that time, when they're all snacking, take a moment to say, all right, I got 2 hours left. How am I going to do this? Look at your plan. Look at it, figure out a way to get there, map out a skeleton, anything.
Use that refueling break to figure out your own stuff.
And make it your own. Make it to the time that you want to make it to. Make it to your 4-hour block, your 3-hour block, whatever you're going to get to. Reach a point, and if they get there normally and they get there ahead of time, they get there quicker, great, wonderful. Look at that efficiency. That's fantastic. I love it when players are really efficient, but I also like it when players experiment and they go completely in wild directions and they make a brand new story. But then that's where this will hopefully show you there are ways to pull from what you know your goal, and then you should be able to come up with something to deal with those inevitable forks that go off in random directions.
Well, I guess next time on the next episode of Dragons from Scratch, we'll see how that goes. Maybe you'll implement some lessons you've learned from this first session, and
let's hope
we'll see another really fun session.
Another group of 4 players and 4 random characters that we know nothing about in a game in a world I'm going to come off the top of my head. This first one was an absolute blast. And all of the things that we learned making it, just ways to make this better. Even this podcast is the first time I call it a podcast. Us sitting down and breaking this down for the first time is a lot of fun. Thank you all so much for just being a part of this. And hopefully we entertained you. We gave you a few tips that'll help you all out, and we'll see you all soon.
And we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.